date, you will be able to sign up for that at www.suteatro.org. More details are forthcoming. Also, the 7th ever WordFest and Artists of Color Summit is coming up next week on Friday, April 16th at 1 p.m. We will kick it off with a Film Producers Academy workshop given by our partners, Media Arts Santa Ana. This year's festival will feature new work in progress by artistic director Anthony J. Garcia, The Sun Serpent by Jose Cruz Gonzalez, and some other very exciting events. So everything's staying busy here at Suteatro through 2021. It's really heating up. It's really going to be a great year for us. So we invite you to come and join us early in the game and see just everything that we have going on. So this evening, I want to welcome our guests for Truly Texas Mexican. Writer, producer, and lead in the film, Adan Medrano, is here with us this evening, as well as director, Anibal Campoano. As well as additional panelists, we have Virginia Diaz Laughlin, who is our producer. Unfortunately, we do not have Gabriel Bendahan, who was supposed to be here, our cinematographer, but he's off doing other projects as well. So we really want to thank our guests for coming. Welcome. I will now hand it over to our executive artistic director, Anthony J. Garcia, who will facilitate this evening's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Felicia. Thank you, Molly. We're excited for this production. I think all of you, those of you who are watching, just came from seeing the film, and I hope you had food with you while you were watching it, because it was very tough for me to watch it and not have anything to eat. And just talking about the film starts making my mouth water. Adan and I both serve on the board of the National Association of Latino Arts and Culture. I want to send a shout out to Nala. And we've actually he curated a film for us, an evening for us, and actually not only did the film but did the food. So let me ask you to introduce yourselves. Maybe you can just give me a little bit about you and where you are. That'd be one thing. What city you're in? Why this film resonated with you or whatever. Just to get us started with the conversation. Adan, why don't we start with you?
Okay. I'm Adan Medrano. I was born in San Antonio, and I am in San Antonio right now. I live in Houston. I am a food writer right now, and I've written books about the food of South Texas and Northeastern Mexico. And I'm on my way to Corpus Christi, where a film will be broadcast there. And I was executive producer of the film, which was a work of love, and I worked with Virginia and Anibal.
Excellent. Virginia, would you like to go second?
Sure. Hi, my name's Virginia Diaz Laughlin, and I'm a native of San Antonio, and went to University of Texas, Austin, got my degree in radio, TV, film, and I've been working in the industry for a long, long time. We won't say how many years, just a long time. And this is my first time that I've been a producer on the film. I have worked in many other capacities, working my way up, production coordinator, production manager, location manager, but this is the first film that I really felt that I could get to this position of producer, and I really wanted to work on the film with Adan. And Adan and I met back in 2017, and we started working on this film. So it's been a 3-year-long project.
Anibal, you're not a Tejano too, are you?
No. I am from Uruguay. That is a little country between Brazil and Argentina in South America. And I'm my filmmaker, and I'm a part of the production team of the documentary and the role of the direction. It's my second work. I made a first called Teen Horse. That is a community documentary with ecology topics and social development.
Brilliant. So I think the film could also be called Adan Goes to Different Places and has other people cook for him. I thought the whole first part, what a scam, right? He takes a camera and then people feed him, which is really, really interesting for me. But I really would have a curiosity, because we've had other conversations on, and just like, tell me about your personal path to this film. I mean, it intersects for me. I mean, from my knowing you, the passion for film that you have and your background in film, but also the work you've done as a chef. But on a more personal level, how did those two paths come together, and how does the film connect them?
How does the film connect them? Okay. I graduated from college with a degree in journalism, and my specialty at that time, you could get one, was in television production. So my first career was as a filmmaker. I did that for about 20 years. And for the past 10, 12 years, I've been a food writer. And I wrote 2 books about the people of South Texas and northeastern Mexico, my community, that has been suffering from not just physical violence of racism, but erasure from history. And part of that history that was erased is our indigenous roots. I've always felt that. I felt it with our food. When I began to do food, I was doing the same thing with food that I was doing with film, and that is expressing the native experience and the vision that comes from living on this land as a colonized people. And I wrote 2 books. The first book, Anibal read. He's read both my books. And Anibal and I had been friends before. He read the book, and we were talking, and he said we should do a film about it. And that's how the idea started. I feel that our story is a universal story, but Anibal also felt that, and that's why we came to the film. You remember that, Anibal? No?
Yeah, I know you. ¿Quiere contestar? Responder sí, Aníbal, sí.
Sí, un poco the story of the book of Adan. I think that we in the Americas, we share a lot of things in common. And the enthusiastic way of Adan to tell the story. Y saber que es una historia no contada me entusiasmó para filmar la película. Creo que es un tema que está en toda América y quizás en el mundo, el tema de colonizar un poco el relato y las narrativas. Y bueno, eso fue lo que teníamos en común para entusiasmarnos a contar la historia.
So much of our history, our stories, is in our food, and I think that's one of the things that you're talking about, Anila, and so much of it gets lost in that. One of the I was about to go off on a tangent, but I'm going to bring myself back. And Virginia, and see how do you connect with this? Was cooking as food part of your obviously your upbringing, yes, but what was the role that it played in your family?
Well, I think for me, and I'll point to a real specific example. When I was reading Adan's book, when we were, I was thinking about joining the team, there is he talks about warming up tamales on the camal, right? That great aroma that can only be from that tamale. And it reminded me right away of my grandmother, because that's how she had warmed up her food. And that would be in morning with her little cafecito, right? And a tamale from the camal. So it connected with those stories in the way that his book is written. It's not just about the recipes, it's the women behind the recipes. And you'll see that in his book. And so I think that really drew me to this story, because it's about our memories, and it's about the women primarily who hold those memories and hold the traditions, and that we had not really heard about or not have been featured before. And these aren't women chefs who have their own shows, and that these are the home cooks. This is your tia, and this is your prima. And these are real people that are holding our culture and continuing our traditions. So that's what interested me very much in working on the project.
It's just it's sad, or it's that you guys could not have done like a smell kind of app with this, so that when people it's a shame that you couldn't include the smell of the first half of the film in the showing of the film. You know what I mean? It would have been great to have all those smells, because I think just on personally for me, my mother would make a fresh pot of beans, and when it gets cold here, that's what we'd come home to, was a fresh pot of beans, and I could smell it a block and a half before I got to my house. And as I got to the windows would be steamed over, and it was from the beans that were in the house. And I would go, "Oh my God, we're gonna have beans!" And it would just, everything was just kind of wrapped around there. And then it's kind of interesting to me that you go and you're a journalist and you're a filmmaker, and then suddenly you flip and you go into the culinary arts. Who were those women in your life early on that said, did you cook? Were you the guy? Were you with your mother in that kitchen? And she was teaching you to chop all these things up and make it? Or were you just a connoisseur?
The tie between food and filmmaking is very, very, very close for me. And I grew up knowing food, enjoying food, and in my entire career, between filmmaking and food writing, I was a philanthropist. I was a grant maker on the road for 23 years. And even during that time, food was very central to me. So the film does have smell around, actually. I can attest this because I have received hundreds of letters, of emails, and also if you read the posts on Facebook, they're so positive and rich, and many of them say I was brought to tears because no one has ever told the story. I could smell la barbacoa because I remember. I could smell, the imagery that Gabriel Bendahan shot with the direction of Anibal is so strong in the film. If you see the images, that people do feel it, and I think that's the strength of the film. How can you do a film that makes people feel something, makes people react, have a visual reaction? That's what I call a film. That's what I call a film, and that's what I think our film does. It melds both. Anibal, Virginia, chime in about the technical.
Yeah, I think not so much technically, but I just wanted to say that we've gotten so many comments from people saying, I've been in that Sunday kitchen when you're having that barbacoa. And it just reminded me of, getting together with my cousins and sisters and everyone. And everyone connects with that, which I think is really interesting. And that scene and the way we shot that, it was very personal. We were not intruding on these people. We were actually like part of them and part of the family, So, and we had a very, very small crew. It was just the four of us. Right, so Gabriel, camera, and Anibal, who's doing directing and also helping with the sound and that. And so I think part of the reason it's so intimate is because we had such a small crew and very little equipment. It was just the camera, no lighting, no additional lighting or anything else. So I think that really, really helped in bringing those memories and warm remembrances for people.
Yeah, and by design, Anibal and Gabriel had done this type of film, and they know which are the technical difficulties that people have if they're being filmed. And I don't know if Virginia is holding back on her production. Virginia was the co-location manager for the feature film Selena, and has a lot of big film credits, and so her being there was very important. Anibal, say more about that, because I think that's important for how people feel about the film. They're so strong. ¿Cómo hiciste para lograr esa intimidad? ¿Cómo funciona cámara, sonido, etcétera?
Bueno, como decían, a small crew, we work like framing the unexpected. Encuadrar lo inesperado, en el sentido de no armar la escena tanto, sino nosotros establecer el encuadre en el cual se desarrolla la escena. Esa sería un poco la manera del trabajo. también, also the connection and the empatía que Adan establece con los entrevistados. Esa empatía, creo que esa frescura, creo que se nota en la película.
¿Era difícil a trabajar cuando la comida está cocinando? ¿A concentrar en el trabajo?
Sí. Igual algo probábamos. Íbamos comiendo un poquito.
We always ate
Were
it.
you very familiar with the type of food that Adan was cooking, that Adan was sampling?
Tiene algunas cosas similares y otras no. Por ejemplo, lo picante, los chiles no, pero sí por ejemplo, la carne, sí, así en Uruguay la carne de vaca es como muy importante, o sea, es lo más importante.
¿Y cabeza también?
¿Cómo?
¿Cabeza también?
No, cabeza no, pero es lo único que no. Sí.
My grandmother used to eat brains with scrambled eggs. Cebolla.
Yeah.
No. Go ahead, Adan. You got something you want. Go ahead.
No, I wanted to continue on what Virginia and Anibal were saying about the intimacy of the film. We wanted for the viewer, we wanted this to be a film. So it's not reportage. The viewer, you are not looking at people. We wanted you to be with the story, not looking at the story. And what Anibal said, because he said it in Spanish, he said their theory, the way they film is hacen el encuadre. They set the scene with the camera placed. And then they let action unfold so that there may be surprises if there are surprises. And that was the way we did it. We didn't tell people do this, do that, or function. We simply allowed life to happen. And maybe Virginia, you could speak about this. Virginia, as a producer, you have to go beforehand and make sure that the permits are there, access is there, the mosquito nets are there. So would you speak to that, how it is that you've got to structure it so that what Anibal is saying, that he wants the life to unfold and be captured by the glass on the lens?
Yeah, so we did a lot of pre-planning. We were 9 days shoot. We started in Houston and made our way to San Antonio and then down to the Valley. So part of my job as the producer was to make sure everything was in place and prepared as much as possible, because then you can allow those things to happen and unfold and you're all ready to capture them. You know, if you start stumbling and you're having a little difficulty just getting the basic things set up, it doesn't allow for the opportunity to have things just, you know, happen right in front of the camera and you're there to catch it. So it's kind of important, you know, on that end to be prepared. They were all surprised when I showed up with this huge notebook and I was on the phone all the time. I was like, well, I'm prepping for the next place. We got to be ready. I'm prepping while they were working. But that's what, as a producer, that's your job, is to allow the creative team to be able to take advantage of everything that we can, and then to get things that, you know, to have the time to get things that we didn't think we could, but we did. We came back with 27 hours of footage. So you're seeing the best of that, and it's the most beautiful. I feel that the visuals are a character in themselves for this film. And that was because we allowed them to do what they do.
I would. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. This is your interview, but don't worry about interrupting me.
No. The ideas that Virginia and Anibal are talking about, how you make films. That's how they make films. That's how I made films, and I would not have done this with any other type of crew, with any other crew. Anibal and Gabriel are used to working with community documentaries where it is necessary that truth be told of the people, not that you shoot something about them. It's got a company inside, and Virginia has that. And so it was perfect. I was interviewing people knowing where the camera was and what they were doing, and I was completely relaxed because I knew if they relaxed, if I relaxed, the camera's going to catch it because they're there. We had this confidence among us. It was wonderful working with this team.
No, I think the intimacy and the passion for the subject matter, and that's to me. I mean, the easiest thing to talk about is the food because it's so much. To me, I understand it from an artistic standpoint too, because I believe that so much of our history and our family memory is in the sounds, whether it's in music, whether it's in the opening notes of La Negra, or whether it's in the smells that come into the kitchen. And those are the things, the colors, like the color in Molly's kitchen there, that you just see the color so vibrant and it jumps out and it's telling you something about her personality and her home. And so I really connect with that. And that must have been to try to tell that, plus and also a difficult story of colonization and oppression and marginalization and appropriation. I think the things you say is very bold about Tex-Mex and the conflict that has created. I mentioned this in one of our other conversations, but we never talked about it. Denver's the home of Chipotle. The whole Chipotle chain, I'm not sure how broad their range. It came out of Denver, and the guy was in San Francisco and he saw the big burritos they made, and he said, "I could do that, and I can fast food it." And it's something that good luck. It's taking our food out there, but it's not authentic food. And it doesn't have, I guess what it doesn't have is that memory. It doesn't have that historical connection. Yet that's another aspect of something being taken away from us. And I know you're very passionate about that, Adan. Would you like to comment on that?
One of the chefs we interview is the chef owner at Maria's restaurant in McAllen, Texas. Second generation owner, and from her mother. And she mentions Taco Bell, and she says that they call it cardboard food. And when young people compare Taco Bell to her food, she just laughs. And of course, there's no comparison. How could there be? We've got the memory. She says, when people come here and I speak to them, they tell me about the memories because it's comida casera. And then she actually says, I bring them memories. She knows that these connections are there. And all of the chefs whom we interview are women. Some are street vendors who have a very, very difficult time. Street vendor women are persecuted by bureaucrats who want them to get this and that permit, realizing that they don't have the assets, they don't have the bank withdrawal possibilities, and yet they will not allow for them to be trained or to have access. They do not. They just punish. That's what she said. They just punish. They don't care to help. And so these women know, these chefs know what they're doing. That they're not just selling food. They're providing community cohesion. They're providing memories to people, and I like all of them because each of them is different. The thing about our film is that Virginia and Anibal, if you can speak more to this, that our film has layers of meaning. There is not one definition of this or one definition of that. We simply present, and has many layers. There are layers of identities. There are layers of labels. There are layers. So Virginia,
I think we were talking to Christine Ortega. It's that, and that's Adan's niece, where we had the barbacoa, the pozo, and her comment was, this film, it tricks you because it thinks, we're just going to do recipes and we're going to talk about cooking and your grandmother, but then we go into all these other themes that are all coming back to the women and the women in your life and what happened to the Native American people. And so a lot of people are surprised by that. They're thinking, well, it's a road show, just like other cooking shows or other cooking documentaries. and it's not. People are like, well, wait a minute. Now I really have something to think about because we're talking about identity, which is like really important, I think, to a lot of us. So I think that surprised a lot of people watching.
Anibal?
Sí, y también also de la mirada que podemos tener, por ejemplo, desde otras regiones como de Sudamérica, creo que cambia un poco la idea que uno tiene sobre esa región y sobre esa comida. Quizás también hasta, no sé, ustedes, pero incluso capaz que hasta los propios estadounidenses les cambia un poco la mirada de esa región.
I agree. And you know what? I haven't been doing translations, and I think that our audience is bilingual enough so that we can do that. If somebody feels they want to repeat what you said, but that's why I'm there, because it sounds the same to me, whether it's Spanish or English, right? And so I'm not really very good at doing those kind of things. But did you want to? Okay, well, let me do this. Adan, if you would go ahead and finish your thought, and then Felicia has some comments from the audience. But let's go to you first, please.
I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to finish off a little bit of what I think most people understood you, Anibal, but the point was about he's hoping that this film does present a new perspective about the region and the food, not just for people who are on the outside like himself, but even Americans, people who are not from that region, that they will have a different understanding of what that region is and what the U.S. is from watching. I think just to finish what he said.
No, that's not a problem. Excellent. So Felicia, let me go to you, and you can. And what I'm going to ask you to do, Eric has a comment too, but let's just have Eric do his comments. But if you would read the other comments.
Oh, sure. I also think that it was interesting about the comment about Taco Bell, just a little aside, because I have read some of the pieces from the journalist from the Los Angeles Times, Gustavo Arellano, and he calls Taco Bell a gateway drug. So to introduce a lot of people of, this is just a tip, this is just a sample, and there's so much more beyond this life. So I find that funny. It's a great punchline to me. But we do have a comment from Karen Trujillo on Facebook. She says, this film should get an Oscar. It's excellent. Has it received any awards?
Go ahead and you can answer.
I think the first was a selection of the Red Nation Film Festival, I think was one of the first ones. And then the festival in London.
Yes, honorable mention in London. We got Best Documentary at the New York Independent Cinema Awards. Just to have been selected as an official selection at these major festivals is very important. And we were selected in many. Sonoma International Film Festival, that was a big one for us, and they really had me do some cooking as well. Otras, Aníbal, otras festivales en donde estamos.
En Leeds, ya lo dijiste, Leeds, en England, en México, en Ibero.
Mexico.
En
Spain, Mallorca.
En Spain,
Mallorca, yeah.
So if that answers the question, yes, we have. But to me, as Virginia and Anibal, we share these. We share what people say, and the critics have been mainly very, very positive, because no one has ever said, this is an untold story. Such a simple phrase, but even academics we talk to use the word untold, because in this case it's very important, because it really is untold. That's why we did it with layers, and we just touched the layer. This is not the story. This is our story, but it's intended to open up this whole field that has been repressed, suppressed over time.
Yes, I would hope.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I would hope that our people, when you get a form, and it's a census form, it's an information form, it's whatever you have to check off for race and ethnicity, that you think about what that really means now after you watched our film. Because to me, you know, it's are you Hispanic? Are you what are you really? And I hope people think more about that when they get to that place and they're looking at that form. And what labels have been put on you by someone else.
Mm-hmm. Man, you bring up a bunch of things I wanted to connect with you. Let me see if I can pull them all together for you. Just going back to the recognitions and stuff. I mean, one of the things that just happened in Denver is that the screening you did with KRMA, sponsored by Cuba Radio, the numbers were phenomenal. That of people watching, 14,000 people at one point, and they were just, you know, and it was actually outdid the surrounding programming here. So there's a significant amount of interest in this, and into the story that you're telling. But I also wanted to use it to the other piece you raised up was just in terms of the reviews, and you said mostly positive. And I wanted to raise the issue of that was in the Texas Observer about whether and you know, maybe you can give a little bit better background into the review, the response, and then, you know, your response to it, if you all would. Yes, don't all jump in at the same time.
I know. I'm like, Texas Observer.
Okay,
You know what I'm talking about?
I can't remember.
The Texas Observer recently hired the publisher who is Native American, and they've set up a Native American bureau at the Texas Observer. It's a move that's a long time coming, and when the review came out saying that the film needed to have said more about the reservation, Pickapoo and the others, and that it lacked information about the identity of these peoples. And I thought that was very appropriate. When we had our meeting, our production meeting, we're starting a new series. Based on this is the starting point for a new series that we're planning on Texas borderlands. And we took some of those ideas in the review to heart, saying how nice it is that this film brings out voices that otherwise would not have come out. That's a very good thing. So as we move forward, now we're going to do a series of videos, and we're going to be able to do more topics. We're really excited about that.
You know, it sounds exciting. That was one of the questions I did have, is what are some of the other things that are coming down the pike? You know, you have to reissue your books, of course. You know, I'm sure those book sales that we need to. If you don't know this, Adan has a cookbook out there and 2 books, right? And they are available, but I think you should order them all in mass so that he has to do another edition of them and do updates of it, including conversations that he had. I like a back section of conversations with Tony Garcia that he talked to me about wanting to add.
That was chapter 10, I think. Yes.
Chapter 10. We had another thing about how
my dinner with Tony Garcia.
That was a great dinner. That was one of the best meals I ever had in DC. I tell everybody that story. We went to a place where Adan knew the chef, and they just kept bringing food to us. It was amazing. It's good to go into places where they know this guy, right? Because he hooks you really up really good. Felicia, did you have more you wanted to add?
I do have one. Karen Trujillo Gonzalez also said that FNX, First Nations Experience, should air it. And there is a channel, FNX, and she's suggesting that it should also be on that channel as well. But I also wanted to make sure that
we are.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, we are on that channel. They have decided to air the program. Sorry to interrupt you.
Well, you're way on the ball. I think it's wonderful that even you're able to take that constructive input and turn around and make another series off of it. I think that's a very positive thing. I didn't know if you wanted to bring in Eric to go ahead and read his comment.
Go for it. You want me to do it? Okay, Eric, you're out there. Why don't you had some really good comments and observations? Can you share those with us, please? You put them in the chat.
Yeah, so I was wondering because like I just first off, I think it's amazing what you do, like talking to all these people about their food and like the history behind their food. Because I know food for me, in my opinion, is like just as important as language when it comes to culture. Because if you don't know your foods, like you like don't know your culture in my eyes. Because like key staple foods like corned bean and squash have always been like historically tied with Hispano and Southwest culture. So my question is like, besides the recipes that were talked about in the film, what do you think is one recipe you would like hand down to like a cook like myself? Because I like learning about recipes because like I learned a lot from my grandma, my aunts, and like even other people's family. Just because I'm curious about food all the time. So like, what's one recipe you think you would like recommend?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Our DP Gabo, he picked one because he ate mole in every place that we went. That was his dish. He's like, I'm gonna eat it all. He ate it like every day, anytime we got somewhere. And I think that's a really great dish too, because it's there's so many layers and such a different way to prepare it. So many people have different ways, and it's one that's handed down. The way Letty talks about it in her interview, she took a little ingredient from an aunt and from a grandma, and then she made her own mole. So I think that's kind of really a really good example because it is taking from everyone. So it's a family recipe.
Yeah, my grandma's taught me how to make her mole because she makes it from like the sauce from scratch and all that.
Yeah.
I would recommend beans and rice cooked really well. Beans that you caramelize the starches and then the protein also changes, and the flavor becomes very rich and has a lot of umami flavor. You roast the beans in pan very slowly, like our moms used to do. That is very precious. You combine that with rice. In the rice, put the trinity of Texas Mexican region spices, which is garlic, black pepper, and cumin. And those two together will form a protein that will sustain your life. The protein in the corn tortilla, burned properly, also is easily digestible, and it has the nutrients that will sustain life. So if you just do those, they will be inexpensive, they will be readily available, and they will be absolutely delicious, and they will sustain you. You might add calabacita, squash. Do a calabacita in a sartén and add kernels of corn, a little salt. Delicious.
Anibal.
Well, voy a brindar con ustedes por el festival con un cóctel paloma que es que con tequila y jugo de toronja, un poquitito de azúcar. Y bueno, brindo con ustedes con eso para agradecerles un poco y por el festival que sea un éxito.
Excellent. That does remind me of the Chicano cocktail that we were putting together, that you guys put together. I don't know where we ended up on that, but un cóctel, ¿sí? Un brindis. Eso. We had another comment, Alicia.
Yes, well, I see that we have someone saying they have a comment, but I don't see the actual comment. I'm looking for it, and I do not see it.
It's another student question.
Oh, it's a Karen. Karen, did you want to ask your question?
Mi pregunta es para Aníbal. ¿Cuáles son las diferencias entre la comida uruguaya y la comida mexicana?
Bueno, la comida mexicana tiene una diversidad que es muy amplia y bueno, tiene un carácter muy fuerte. Uruguay tiene una influencia muy fuerte italiana y europea, y eso la hace bastante característica también. Pero creo que la comida mexicana tiene una diversidad que es difícil de parecerse a ella. Creo que con Texas la carne sí, creo que lo que lo emparenta. Y después, bueno, muchas plantas nativas de toda América, pero creo que es eso, que la diversidad mexicana es difícil de compararse.
Interesante. Do you want to fill it in, or do you feel we're okay? I mean, we talked about that how strong that there's a real strong flavor in the Mexican food, and food from Uruguay was influenced a lot by Europeans and such, and so there are some significant differences in that. But Mexican food is real significant, has a real characteristic of its own. Is that you okay with that?
Yeah.
We got 5 minutes. The time's going by really, really fast. I'll say something, and then I think we leave it open for if you guys want something you want to fill in and you want to keep going from this. I found the film at times, that you guys talk about an intimacy, but I think there's a very spiritual aspect to it too. I think you could almost. I keep wanting to find out, Adan, about you, putting you in there as a character, and I think that that you approach it very objectively, and I want to go and say, what is that next step? But because you're really sharing some very serious spiritual elements with us. One of the things that you talked about, and I think you talk about it in a real smart way. But I've had a conversation with my students, and I'm of the opinion that the Chicano, Mexicano, Indigena culture, that we are actually a matriarchal society. I had somebody once tell me, you have a different experience as they were white with passive Latinas, and I said I have never met a passive Latina. I don't think they exist, right? But in my experience, in my life growing up, the women ran the world. They ran our world for a lot of different reasons, and colonization is a part of it. And a lot of us, our experiences in Colorado, a lot come from New Mexico. And the times a lot of us migrated from New Mexico. My family maybe 200 years ago. But we know at times that what took place was with the males there. The males were either taken, some were just killed. They were removed from the household. So leaving the world were very similar to the African-American experience, where men did not exist in those families. And women learned different ways also of running it without having those direct power sources. I think your film opens up all of those ideas. And then I think in that sense, you're right, it is multi-layered, and it has a very, very strong political punch. It's a really interesting journey. As a playwright, I keep wanting to find okay, now if I was telling this as the narrative, where was a moment, Adan, where this change happened to you, where that moment happened, that change happened to you, where that flavor happened, all of those things in there. It causes me to want to see it more often and want to see all the next things that you're doing and wanting to keep digging deeper in that. I know it feels it's a very personal film with you. And I like that, and the more that I find out about the personal piece, the more it draws me in. So there's not a question in there someplace. That's just me talking about my reaction.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that might kind of shed some light on things. So we went out again and shot those 9 days. In the opening segment where you see Adan and he's talking about the molcajete, right? That didn't happen till the last day of shooting. So it kind of evolved as we were going along, and Anibal was the one that put Adan on the spot there, and he interviewed him, and it just came to him. It's the molcajete. That's what the metaphor is for our people, and it's just interesting maybe for your film student, because that it evolved like that. It wasn't planned. So that's another way that we filmed and how things happened, just by happenstance, you know.
We had a very similar conversations with earlier films with other filmmakers who said sometimes you just kind of start, and the things that are revealed to you in the process actually become much more significant. I could see the Molcajete becoming, you know, almost like a medicine wheel of sorts. You know, that circular piece and all the metaphorical pieces connected with it. Very good. Felicia, did you want to ask anything or comment on anything? I know you have a very intimate connection with food, and you're getting ready to do your programming. And I thought maybe just a moment to share or whatever you want to offer.
Well, all of these conversations have been very validating because these are all concepts that I just kind of kick around in my head on my own. And, you know, as someone who originally wanted to grow up and become a healer, I wanted to become a pediatrician, and I didn't take that route. I went a route of anthropology and social science and understanding systems, and I still appreciate that healing aspect. And it's been recently just the attraction of using food as a healing mechanism, and not just like on a one-on-one situation, but really as a larger piece. You know, the idea of bringing people to a table to break bread, and talking about their similarities as opposed to their differences. And so that's a very strong pull in me. And I think hearing all of these concepts that you're kicking around and that you reinforced with the movie, and that just happened organically while you were there talking with all of these people, it's very gratifying. It's very validating to hear those kinds of things, because it's a source that's outside of me that's telling me all the same things that I've been thinking for several years. And so it's very powerful to see all of this work done and feel good about what I'm doing. I mean, you really do reinforce that sense in me of that it's true and it's real.
Do you all feel that maybe you're representing a bigger conversation than just your own that you started with?
Us. I'll start.
Yes, you.
I'll start to answer that, and then Virginia. Very much so. Very much so. The response when it first started to come in, saying that this was an Anthony Bourdain next step, things like that, because other food programs do not deal with issues of justice and erasure and feminism, as the women speak, was very gratifying. I would say that I'm glad that it's affirming. For me, that's the purpose of the film, to affirm. To affirm not just that everything is all right, but to affirm that you have a right to speak up, that you have a right to say this is wrong, that you have a right to say I'm angry, that you have a right to say the justice that you call justice is not justice. So I'd say it's spiritual in that sense. To me, making film, before when I was making films and then I stopped, it was always the same thing. I believe in the team. I believe that the film is not just a machine making something, that it is a spiritual process. Spiritual meaning growth and awareness into something bigger than we are. And I think that's what happens. So for me, spirituality in the film is there. But the spirituality is not that everyone's going to say, yes, it's so good, let's all feel good, just like, the Jesus. That is not the spirituality of this film. The spirituality of this film is take a stand, relax in the faith of those who have gone before you, who fought and bled and were killed to achieve the justice that we have, so that the three of us now can say what we say. 10 years ago, we would not have been able to say this. But we are able to, because others work really hard, with unionizations and education and voter registration, so that we're here. That's the spirituality in this film. It's underlying, but the essence is that. It's not feel good because everything's all right now. No, it's real faith. Virginia, you have...
I just think that initially, when we were still working on editing and that, we took a couple of segments and showed them, and part of them was the Chili Queen segment. And every place that we showed that, it's like we had no idea that these women were in San Antonio doing this at that time, and And so it's wonderful that we're being able to bring them out into the people to talk about them. And then what happened to them? You know, it's not the great stories like, oh, it was all wonderful, the Chili Queens was great. And then, no, you know, their businesses were closed, they were forced out. And so it's nice to elevate that story about those women and how important they were and how nobody knew about them.
The Chili Queens are a movie. They're a movie waiting to happen. No, I wanted to offer one other perspective. Well, we'll probably keep doing my perspectives too, I suppose. But you know, when you were talking about our indigenous aspect, Virginia, it reminded me. So Denver is the home of the Crusade for Justice, and Su Teatro's roots are out of the Chicano movement. And I know you have that connection, Adan, and that history. But one of the things significantly that happened out of the Chicano movement in Denver is we hosted the Crusade for Justice hosted the National Student Liberation Conference, and in that conference they introduced what was called El Plan Espíritu de Aztlán. And in that conference, it's kind of set the ideology for a lot of the Chicano movement. One of the statements that it makes, it recognizes Chicanos as an indigenous people. This was more than 50 years ago. And it is a first public statement that is like, we have to understand that we're from this continent. It says we're from this continent and we are an indigenous people. And we are indigenous people of the Americas. And that kind of ideological weight really carried, that's the first time we're starting to hear this, because my parents called themselves Spanish, you know, and if you're coming out of the New Mexico experience, they're Spanish Americans. And now we're here, now for the first time, I looked in that mirror and I said, you know what, I'm not Spanish. And I'm okay with that, you know, and it was a big step. I look at Adan and I see all the indigenous features all over him, and I think that's okay. I mean, it's great for him to be able to wear that kind of, you know, just taking. But I just wanted to offer the connection from our city for what we sent out to the rest of the world was that aspect of recognition, and it's been a long time for us to embrace it. And I think your film helps us take another step closer to being able to embrace that we are an indigenous people.
Yeah. Great.
Wrap us up, Adan. Take us home.
The Rio Grande headwaters are in Colorado. And if you, Dr. Mario Montaño does studies where he takes the students all along the Rio Grande, the people of the Rio Bravo, Rio Grande, all along. And we're all connected. We don't feel connected. We have connections to the reservations, the tribal that are recognized by the U.S. government. And there are judgments to say if you're not in a reservation that's recognized by the U.S. government, you are not Native American. That's another way now that divisions are being engendered among us by those to divide us into those types of identities that were originally one, but we have been displaced through time. So the river that starts in Colorado comes all the way to Texas. We're all one. We're glad to be making it back to XicanIndie. All the way from Uruguay south to Colorado. It's a nice journey.
I'll give you something to take home with you. Before Denver was named Denver, there was a group of Mexicanos that found gold not far, about a mile from where our theater is, and they established a settlement called Mexican Diggings. So actually, the first name for Denver by non-indigenous people was Mexican Diggings. So we're in our land, right? So I guess that's a re-emphasis of that. Thank you all very much. I'm so excited. I appreciate how generous you have been with your time, team. All of you, it's so good to meet you. And Adan, we know we're going to hook up at some point. And we got a meeting coming up. I just got the email today. And so safe travels, all of you. Enjoy the rest. Thank you for giving us food for thought as well as for our panzas. And I will go back to Felicia.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us this evening. This conversation has been really wonderful. The time flew by. And so thank you very much for sharing all of these, as well as your film with us, as well as the demonstration. Thank you. We invite everybody to keep coming back for more. Tomorrow, Sunday, April 11th at 1 p.m., we have a Platica for the filmmakers of Missing in Brooks County, screening and Platica at that point. And then at 5:30, we are also running Border South and Night Shift Platica. So we hope that you have registered already. Go to www.suteatro.org to register and get your all access pass for all of the films available through our XicanIndie 23 Film Fest. So I want to hand it off to Molly right now, who's going to tell you a little bit more and close us out.
I just want to thank one more time our XicanIndie collaborators, KUVO 89.3 FM, Rocky Mountain PBS, the Consulate General of Mexico, and Media Arts Santa Ana. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m.